The following is my conversation with Davide Rossetti. Davide has deep experience in sports and in retail, having worked with Coin, Invicta, Cisalfa, and Intersport, AlpineStars, as well as he was most recently the general manager of Northwave, and he currently holds position of chief executive officer of the shoe brand SIDI Sport. Davide Rossetti, thank you so much for coming on today. It's really nice to see you. I know you've got a very busy schedule, being the CEO of a global leader in cycling shoes and motorcycle shoes. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you to you. Thank you for your invitation. Yes, as you said, quite busy schedule also because we are a few days from our sales meeting for bike and right after for moto. So let's say we are kind of busy, but let's say in today working times, I think it's very difficult to find a space where you're not busy. So that's
Of course,
business as usual, let's say.
Business as usual. So I guess let's dive right in. The situation for a sales meeting, maybe since this is the Business of Cycling podcast, what is your sales meeting? Is it, because I know cycling, or I know bikes pretty well, where we'll present for the fall. Is it similar for you guys? Do you guys have like yearly collections, or do you have bi-yearly collections?
Well, let's say this is something that actually we are changing, meaning that in the past, SIDI was used to have one sales meeting per year and release one catalog per year. And this was normally happening around this period of the year for bike, as most of the company are used to, which is, let's say, around May, and for moto around July. But let's say we are thinking about changing this for the future, because as it happened in many other industries, I think that they become more and more difficult for the market and for the, let's say, the digestion, let's say, of the distribution pipeline to receive just one collection per year, to commit to one or multiple orders for a season or a year, when we experienced during the last 2-3 years how fast things can change. So let's say, obviously, we are in an open dialogue with our distribution partner. So we might be evolving from the traditional scheme where you release one collection per year to adapt to a much modern time, let's say, where things are changing faster.
So in your experience, I've always wanted to ask this question, this concept of collections, of single collections. I know this was sort of a requirement in the industry, and it sounds like you guys are trying to evolve. What are your thoughts on this process? Like, what are you seeing from your partners and from the market? What are you seeing the changes that maybe need to be made?
Well, let's say that for sure there are some seasonality, which are obviously in a way directly related to the products that you are presenting. And obviously it will be difficult to change this completely. But let's say both large organizations, retailers, key accounts, and so on, which have, let's say, and this is driven not only by technical sports, but also from some other product categories, mainly coming down from fashion, sportswear, and so on, where they are used to multiple deliveries and multiple presentations during the year. If you take big sports company, big sports corporation, they're already divided into 4 because they have spring, summer, fall, holiday, which is something which is not traditionally used as a seasonality for sports, but it's helping to, let's say, move during the season different level of collections and different deliveries. So not to commit for months or seasons to big amount of products, which obviously have to stay in the shop for a very long time.
So it sounds like it has more to do with being able to give the market smaller amounts to digest, and then maybe also gives you
with the highest frequency of delivery, obviously.
Higher frequency of delivery, and then you're able to be maybe more engaged with your clients too, right?
You have to, at this point, you have to, and this is something obviously that is part of the modern way of presenting the brand, delivering the products, communicating to the end consumer. Sure, we are obviously, these have to match with the business, the typology of business that we are in, meaning that a company like SIDI is into what we call technical products. Technical products is not fashion products when it's just about a color or a graphic. Obviously, there is much more behind, which is taking sometimes months, sometimes years to design, identify, prototype, test, develop, and be sure that you're going to deliver a product that, as a first point, has obviously to satisfy my need for a performance. But let's say more and more, this is also evolving. Consider that we have also one advantage that compared to many other brands, we are based in Europe, but also our production facilities are based in Europe. We produce 100% of our products in Europe and 100% into our factories. Obviously, this is giving a competitive advantage, first of all, in the time to market. So we can be much faster than other companies where just if you produce in Asia, on an average, at least it is at least 6 months before you can have something at your warehouse.
Shorter supply chain. I
Yeah.
think we can jump into, I don't want to get, I always, everything seems to be running into COVID in my latest conversations, because I know, so I don't want to get into that just yet, but we will. So maybe let's jump back. So how did you get into, you seem like you got into sales first. Is my guess correct?
Well, let's say when I started, which is really many years ago at this point, right after my university degree, my first working experience was in a company which is in the optical industry, which name is Safilo Group. At the time, let's say working for a sport company or sport products was just, let's say, a wish. But I got a, let's say, good opportunity, and so I decided to accept it and to start to work at the marketing department at the time of Safilo Group. Safilo Group was and was for many years the second biggest player in the eyewear business, mainly related to fashion. It was growing like 30% year after year. All young people, subsidiaries all over the world, fashion and luxury brands. But I say the entire world of the optical industry was changing at the time, because a few years before it was mainly about prescription glasses, and sunglasses in the world was something like 7 or 8% of the overall world of eyewear. Around the end of the 80s, Safilo as a first started to make branded sunglasses. And the first one they did it was for Gucci. And after that, they took some other brands. So when I came forward,
you did licensing for
licensing, exactly,
okay.
exactly.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
it was at the beginning of the use of licensing to make brand extensions, not only in sunglasses. So at that point, they were working with Polo Ralph Lauren, Gucci. So it was kind of normal to see people from those kind of company around, no, at the meeting rooms and so on. But very quickly, there was a move by the biggest player, which was Luxottica,
Of course.
which bought in a couple of months Arnett, and then Brico. Brico at the time was the brand for Alberto Tomba in ski, for Marco Pantani in cycling. So it was the key brand for those kind of product, sunglasses and helmets. Safilo obviously was following the same direction, and they bought Smith Sport Optics in the United States and Carrera in Austria. The project was led by the director of marketing at the time. I was working with him. I was there probably since, I don't know, 6, 8 months. And one day he called me and he told me, you come with me and you go to the other department to work on the product management of these products. I was kind of shocked in a way, because I was not feeling prepared to do it. But I have to say that there were some other people joining the company at the time with good experience, people that was also working in the following years in big companies. And that today, two of them, they're still like my mentors, meaning that I'm still in a dialogue with them, people which was working also for big brands like Nike and so on. So, and from there, let's say I started to develop into my career, moving from product to brand, from brand to marketing, sales, up till general management. Always tell me.
Oh, sorry. So Safilo, you're in Safilo, and Safilo begins to acquire brands, begins
Yeah,
to create lots of growth. It sounds like one of them was Smith Optics in the
yeah,
US. And so you kind of got thrown into all these projects, and it sounds like it was a really formative experience for
exactly,
you.
exactly.
So you had the opportunity
Uh,
to work in different departments, see lots of different things, and you became
Exactly. Also because the team was quite small at the very beginning, because it was a team based at the headquarters, which was supposed to control and develop the two company, one in Austria and the other one in the United States. So first of all, and I'm talking about 1995, 1996. Since from the beginning I had a laptop. Since from the beginning I was used to travel and to have my laptop on my knees on long distance flights or at airport or at the hotel room no, in the evening and so on.
you enjoy traveling.
Yes, in a way that probably it was already something that I like a lot, because almost at the same time I was already doing it by myself, mainly as a holiday, but traveling in the mid of the 90s to Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, or other destination in the world, in let's say in an era where there was not Booking, there was not TripAdvisor, there was not Skyscanner to look for
Sure.
for tickets and so on.
So you're not, because in Italy, I don't know, not a lot of people know this, but in Italy, the typical career, I mean, most typical careers involve finding a nice company, sitting, and then working for that company. It sounds like you were the complete opposite. You were pretty ambitious. You wanted to grow and you wanted to travel. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and I have to say that my manager at the time was exactly the same than me. So let's say I found that, can I say, an easy ground, because it was really international and I like a lot. It was always speaking in English. It was traveling a lot. It was starting from the perspective that you have to stay outside and understand.
Sure.
Use the company to develop projects, but not staying at the company and imagining that something is going to happen outside. And this was and is with me still today. During the years I had the opportunity to travel globally and extensively. Tell me a country where you can ride on a bike or on a motorbike or do another sports, for sure I was there. I would say from Colombia to Japan and from Canada down to New Zealand and whatever is in the middle. So I have to say that I was lucky enough to find good managers which really work with me in a very open way. Sometimes, there is a kind of barrier when there is the manager and someone reporting to the manager, while these guys were really like very open with me. They teach me a lot of things. As I said, I'm still in a strict connection with them. I talk with them once per week, and this gave me a lot of inspiration also when obviously I was becoming older and taking different positions with the people working with me. I had a lot of opportunities since from the beginning, for example, to go to the university, talk at the university, presenting company, presenting projects, be in the world of sports in a way or another. You are always linked with young, talented people. And even during the last 10, 15 years, even now, I'm always trying to bring young people to the company, whether it is through university, schools, project whatsoever, and try to work almost in an opposite way, no, to say, okay, when you are young, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of creativity, you have a lot of inspirations. Maybe you do not have 100% of the tools that can help you to understand or control a business, but just think about the biggest corporation, whatever it is, even the big technology or even Nike. They were all started from very young people, not from people which is 50 or 60 or no, or older. And that's something that we had also a meeting here today with the team which is working with me on trying to work in a kind of reverse way. So bringing as much as possible young people and work with them and understanding what is coming, because they are the generation that is in front of us and that is coming next on our product.
So, okay, so we talked about how important mentors have been in your career, and then you're trying to kind of give back. You're trying to make sure, seeing that you were able to develop and contribute, you want to make sure and try and integrate that into the company. And that's a pretty sophisticated, mentality. Working in, I guess, so you worked in Safilo, and
Yes.
when was your first kind of experience directly in the cycling industry? Was that Northwave then?
Well, let's say that at the time, consider that with Carrera, we were sponsoring the team that probably
Sure.
remember
The irons.
Ivan Gotti, Virenque, Ivan Basso, which is funny story because it was one of my rider 25 years ago when he was an emerging rider. And today is the manager of Iolo Cometa, which is one of the team which is riding now at the Giro d'Italia. And so, yeah, no, at the time I was already a lot into road
Carrera.
cycling,
Mm-hmm.
also into mountain biking, because let's say the reason why at the time Safilo bought these two brands was that they were really one the complement of the other. So while Carrera was on road, Smith was on MTB. Carrera was on ski, Smith was on snowboarding. So they were always on the two different of the same sport.
And you were working with both the brands?
Sorry?
Were you working with both brands?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And
yes.
you said you went from marketing to sales to, and then eventually general manager of.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say during the years, then different experiences, even working, for example, at the time with the Diesel group. Diesel is a group into denim.
Yep.
But at the time, they had the brand, which brand name was 55 DSL. 55 DSL was into snow, surf, skate. So I was moving from Philo, where there was Smith, which was in the same world of the action sport, to the other side. So going back to your question, I was not working for cycling for a few years, but then I came back on cycling around 2009 when I was head of marketing at Intersport Italy, and also Cisalfa. Cisalfa is the largest Italian sport retailer after Decathlon.
Sure.
And they have cycling as one of their department. Is not obviously the largest one, because in Italy for sure team sports in general and sports are much bigger than cycling when it is about retail or sport retail. It's not specialty retail, sport retail. And from there, let's say this gave me the possibility at the beginning of 2012 to jump on board at AlpineStars. AlpineStars, which is a company which is not so far away from where is the headquarters of SIDI.
Sure.
It's a family business company, privately owned, founded more or less in the same period, around the 60. But they did already 20 years ago the transition to the second generation. So today, the owner and managing director of the president, the managing director of the company, is a man which is a little bit older than me. And he had this big project of AlpineStars as a brand on the off-road. So starting mainly from MX, but not only, because then, they are very big also in general in motorbike, but to expand into cycling. In the history of AlpineStar, there was already cycling around the end of the 90s when they were doing the first mountain bikes. But then this project was shut down and restarted again, initially putting together a team together with Honda and Maxis, where there was a downhill team, which was like the dream team of downhill with Steve Pitt, Greg Minard, as they say the biggest name in downhill. And from there, it started an idea to start to develop into cycling as a business. So when I arrived, there was a really small, really small collection, and I was at the same time, let's say, head of the business division, but mainly with the purpose to develop the business. So there was obviously a lot of sales and marketing into that position. It's a very big brand. Wherever you go around the world, everybody knows it.
Sure.
Let's say that nobody even think that it is an Italian company, because for I think 99.9% of the people it is an American brand, but instead is an Italian brand, which is a few miles from here. And from there, we started the project, which developed into apparel, bike apparel, and mountain bike protection. And when I left at the beginning of 2018, we were at the point where we were introducing bike helmets. Say there were 5 solid years where I was more than 100% into bike only. So a lot of experience traveling around the world. Let's say the name AlpineStars is opening to many big connections with any kind of brand, any kind of media, any kind of relationship that you want to have. So it's a kind of door opener because
Sure.
the brand name is very well known.
High profile, yeah.
Everybody sooner or later either they have a motorbike or an MX or whatever. So everybody knows AlpineStars and was already a respected brand with a lot of interest around. But
But then you
I
went
got
but then you went to a smaller brand a
I
bit.
wanted to a smaller brand because, after so many years between sales and marketing, despite the fact that I was head of a division, I was almost very close to turn 50. And I thought that it was the right time to take a challenge for something bigger than just sales or marketing, no? Or both.
Sure.
And so at the time I got in contact with the founder and owner of Northwave, which is still in the same area because we are whole base here when it is about sport technical footwear. And I remember very well the brand name and the company since when I was working for Smith, because Northwave, when it was founded, well, originally was like a third-party manufacturer, but starting from the beginning of the 90s, they bought this brand Northwave from a company based in Seattle, and they were doing snowboard boots.
Right.
Obviously, with Smith, I was a lot into snowboard, going to US, I would say almost every month, going to all the trade shows, events, and so on. And I remember that at the time, Northway booth was packed as, I mean, not even Barton at the time. So everybody wanted to have a Northway booth because they were the best booth, they had the best riders, the best image. So they were not the brand for the snowboarders. Then I had some friends also working at this company. And so during the years, I follow a little bit the evolution that they did. They started to introduce cycling, let's say in late 90s. And then during the years, their business was evolving. So in more or less 15 years, they changed from being 70% snowboard, 30% bike in the beginning of the year 2000s to 70% bike and 30% snowboard when I came on board in 2018.
So
Still a family company.
you had, because I wanted to ask you about, so it sounds like you make changes through your career. You've made changes, but it seems like you have like a 3 to 5 year time where it feels like you, I guess maybe just to give people an idea of how you think about that in terms of how
Yes,
long to stay at the company. Maybe it was by chance, but what they say and what I've heard is, you don't want to stay too long because eventually you do kind of see as much, or it kind of diminishes the amount of contribution that you can make. Is that
exactly.
sort of the reason that when you do make a change?
Well, let's say that behind any change, there were more or less different reasons. But I would say that you always arrive to a point where you have the feeling that you're like at the end of a cycle.
Totally.
When you're coming on board in a company, if you have the possibility to start to let's say to develop a project around that brand or that division or that collection, for sure in the very beginning it seems also kind of frustrating because as I said, when working around the collection and working around the product is not something that happened overnight, because understanding which or where there could be an opportunity, finding the right design, developing a prototype, testing, presenting the product, arriving to the market is something that usually is ranging between 1 year and 1.5 years. But when you start to get results and you understand the mechanism, then let's say it's like rounding around the same circle in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So as I said, for sure there were different reasons behind. But I mean, if we take the example of AlpineStars, let's say I was one of the direct report to the company owners. There were no other position to follow. And I was feeling in a need to take a bigger responsibility, despite maybe in a smaller company.
Sure.
Something that would have never been possible in a company like that, because let's say, despite the size, is still a lot of activities which are centralized around the company owner.
Yes, that's something you see in family-owned companies a lot.
Exactly. That's normal in family-owned companies. No? So when I was contacted from Northwave, and they explained me what they were looking for, because they were coming from a situation where there was not a general manager position. They were coming from several years in a row, I would say 5 or 6, where they were almost around the same turnover, not getting good results, not understanding which could have been the possible future for the company, which I said, that's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what I like to do, because I found myself at almost every time that I took a new position, it was a position where there was something to build, something to restructure, something to launch. So it's something that is feeling me really familiar with. If then you are in a position like a general manager, obviously you have a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of possibility, because in the very beginning, the message from me was clear. I think, obviously I studied a little bit before, but I feel that there is a possibility. Okay, I have already the ideas, but I need the full responsibility, because otherwise, if we start to jump in and out between project decision and so on, which is something which is quite typical from the family business
companies, yeah, absolutely.
Is the reason why it's always difficult to start a process with a straight line where you go always in the same direction. And I have to say that they were, let's say, they give me a lot of freedom, a lot of possibility. I was lucky enough that I found good people. And in the first year, despite some people left the company in the very beginning when I came on board, because probably they were like feeling themselves in a comfort area where they could do more or less whatever they want without having someone on top of them asking why we have to make this project, why we have to we took this decision. And
well,
so
this is,
on.
I didn't want to go here. I wasn't sure if you'd be comfortable talking about this, but I wanted to ask you about in companies, not only Italian companies, but in European companies especially, the labor contracts are very strong. Yeah. And so you can find situations where perhaps the situation where perhaps someone maybe leans on that contract more than you would like. Mm-hmm. Okay. What is this in your experience? How have you dealt with this sort of situation in a European context?
Well, let's say more the Europeans. European, I would say, first of all, Italian companies. Not because I do not have the experience of the other countries, but because I think it's really specific when it is about the law of labor. Let's say that something changed during the last 10 years, meaning that you cannot interrupt a contract without a motivation. But for sure, you can bring a motivation to interrupt the contract upfront, an amount of money which is let's say, already defined, that if you are going to stop working together, the company have to compensate this for a period of time. Let's say it was not our case in any case, because let's say I remember when I came on board and I started to interact with the people, develop a plan, starting to work together and so on. And one resigned, the second resigned, the third resigned. No, it was like head of operation, head of product. In the very beginning, I don't want to say scared, but a little bit worried about it, because I was there since probably, 3 to 4 months. And no, I was not yet really in control of what was the company in its, in a complete understanding. But the reality was that give us an incredible opportunity, because the people that we found to replace the ones who left were the perfect gasoline to inject in the engine and to make it work in its full speed, because they understood the challenge. They were all in the need of a challenge. They were all fully committed, all full passionate of cycling. So I remember one of the first things was that when I came on board, there was just one guy riding during lunchtime. 1 year after, we were probably after the company going out for riding during lunchtime. So this changed completely whatever was happening at the company, because let's say it melted together all the team. It was kind of normal to, well, instead before there were a lot of barriers, no product development. I don't want to show the product to sales, otherwise they say if it's good or not good. Actually, it was exactly the opposite. They were looking one for the other to say, what do you think? What
Sure.
I prepared a pair also for you so that you can test it. No, so it was totally different in terms of approach. And obviously we were started, let's say the company started to change quite quickly. As I said, we took also a lot of young people on board. I remember the e-commerce team, they were all people between 26 and 22 years old, and they did an amazing job, e-commerce and social. Obviously, as everybody, we were not prepared to be hit by something unexpected that was COVID. So obviously,
And
in the
you,
very beginning, for such a small company, no, it's I always when even when I'm going to the university or sometimes they invite me to some conferences and so on. I always say it's now, let's say maybe it's easy to say to talk about home working or smart working or something like this. But when you are in a small company, most of the time you don't even have an IT department inside the company, and maybe you have just an IT service. You do not have enough laptop to give to the people. Your lines are not prepared to have 50 people connecting to the same router or to the same server. And we were able to move to the entire company outside in a few weeks and working perfectly even during COVID. So I remember during COVID, I was from 8 in the morning till 8 p.m. on a video call. Then I was exhausted at the end. I just wanted to go back to the office after 40 days like this. But I have to say that the fact that at the point we were such a good team all together gave us the possibility to keep working regardless of the fact that we were at the office or at home, and being extremely ready after COVID. So we took some risk. I remember very well that I convinced the board of directors to some decisions that, I mean, were not so easy to take in February or March 2020, but they were exactly at the point where we were really ready in August, September 2020 to take any possible opportunity, because we kept working, we kept controlling our production, receiving orders at the warehouse, and so on. Let's say I was, I mean, really happy, I would say, with what we were doing. For sure, in spring of last year, let's say, was almost 5 years doing good results, having good results.
and you rebranded as well. You guys changed the
Yeah,
logo,
sure. Yeah, sure. We went
which
through a complete we redesigned the logo, we changed completely our communication, we redesigned most of the products, we opened to new categories. So let's say I have to say that one of the most exciting thing that we got were at Eurobike last year, but even before, let's say even 1 year before, I remember very clearly on a presentation where people from the industry were coming to us to say, you know what, I mean, a few years ago, I don't know, but now, I mean, I saw so many good products that sometimes I don't even know what to choose because there are too many things. So I have to think before selecting something, which was one of the most appreciated comments
but
that.
you took a very established family-owned brand that is typically pretty inflexible,
Yeah.
and you were able to rebrand it and open new categories. I mean, how did you? I know it was probably not that simple, but is there anything you can discuss about kind of what were the biggest key factors in making that happen? Because that's not easy.
Sure, I fully agree. And I would say that it was the strength of the team. Because when before to arrive to the rebranding, there was not a clear vision of for the brand, probably not even a clear mission. And I remember that we started the process where instead of taking a brand management agency or a marketing company whatsoever, we decided to do it everything internally. So it was between me and the sales department and marketing department, having a room where there was a wall with images, messages, decision, things that we want to do, things that we don't want to do, and so on. And
But someone had to have someone had to have experience in doing this, or you guys just figured it out. Yeah, you did. Okay, so
that was me driving
you
the
did. Okay.
driving the let's say, in a way, driving the process. On
Right,
the
because
other, not driving any decision.
you knew that you needed to get a path. You needed a path.
Exactly.
You needed a look, and you needed some sort of values to put, so everybody
Exactly.
could go in the one direction. And before, imagine, it was pretty, because you had seen brands at very high level throughout your career, and you knew that there was something missing.
Exactly. I was on the other side. I mean, I was again lucky enough that I think with the experience that I had in much bigger corporation, where I saw, I mean, but there I had the possibility to work with big international, well-known brand management companies or
Or
marketing,
even
so on,
professional brand managers,
professional brand
right? Because
managers, and so on.
many typical Italian cycling companies, they don't have the size to even have a full-time brand manager. Very few.
Sure, sure,
And
sure.
that's a discipline that is very important.
Sure.
And
No, in fact, that then usually when I like to kid someone, I say, "Are you a marketing manager or in the Italian version of the marketing manager?" Because usually
the
someone who has a marketing manager on his job title is the one which is doing catalogs, the website, maybe
events
in the trade show and events and
events
so on.
so
But
it's more of an
here is
operation.
about strategy. It's about the marketing operation. It's not about strategic marketing and
I never thought
strategic
of it that way, but
management.
that's totally true. You get these very operational people that are just kind of running around. And I guess one thing that I've seen in the last 10 years, and I want to ask you about this because you have had kind of a front row seat, is marketing organizations 10, 15 years ago, marketing departments had essentially, in terms of content creation, had a couple catalogs, maybe a press release every month, and then some events, and that was it. Today, they've got LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, maybe TikTok, newsletter, website, blog. How I don't think that cycling companies have increased their budgets to really handle this. What are you seeing, and the changes? How are brands reacting to this, and how are they managing this? Because it's a huge change.
I have to say, even more than this, probably what changed compared to 20 years ago. Today, there are, particularly in cycling, but even in moto, it's almost the same, large, big US brands where, let's say, there the marketing is totally different than what it is in Italy, for sure. And so, as usual, mm, as I always say, the competition, or the more competition there is, the better it is for everybody, because you help everybody to, you know, to stay in the competition. And so to learn, to develop more, to understand more, to stay in the competition. Otherwise, you risk to go out from the competition. There are companies which understand this. There are companies that still probably are not understanding this 100%. Let's say that what was specific to Northwave was that, despite the fact we were a family-owned company, where still the founder inside, which is over 70, second generation, which still has not taken the control of the company, we had the possibility to act as a company with a strategic marketing and to drive a certain direction. What happened to the companies compared to what I was explaining before, compared to many years ago? There is a there is a much more fragmented level of fragmented marketing activities, because today, in order to stay on all that communication channels and communication tools, you need a lot of contents, whether they are textual, visual, video, images, whatsoever. And so you need to understand very clearly what it is, your brand, because it's not
That
just about sponsoring a rider,
right, and it
some
goes
advertising pages with a rider and your brand name.
right, because it goes back to what you were saying before. Is Northwave really needed that to be able to communicate clearly?
Sure, sure. It
And
was the preliminary, not really the preliminary step, but let's say after 1 year that I was there, where there were obviously totally different priorities. I remember we did a meeting with the different managers of the different departments, and we said this is the priority now, because we need to understand how we want to communicate, and how we want to be perceived from
in the market.
Exactly.
And brands didn't need to do that 20 years ago.
Sure.
Smaller brands, right?
Sure.
They didn't have to,
Sure.
because it was the distributor that put it in the stores, and a lot more was happening in the packaging. Whereas now you're talking with the customer all day long. And so it has to be really clear about what you want and what you do. So I think it's funny, you answered the question. I don't know, maybe I backed into that, but the answer is that cycling brands that in the past didn't directly interact with their clients now have to directly interact with their clients.
Exactly.
And if they don't,
that's exactly the point of my presentation of the last 1-2 years, probably, meaning that while in the past the companies were from the company to the consumer, today it's exactly the opposite. You need to understand who is your consumer, and then you need to start working on your product. Otherwise, and your communication and your brand and so on. So you need to study a lot and to understand much more about what it is outside, and not just about. If you talk with old people, old company owners, I remember still, my initial talk with Dino Signori, or even with Mr. Piva when I was working at Northwave, they say, when you do a good product, that's enough. That's not true. It was like that 20 years ago, but it's not now. It's not sufficient. Let's say it's not anymore sufficient to make
it's still 70%, isn't it? If it's an innovative product, it can do a lot of work for you.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is what I see, and I do agency work, and I do specifically social media, and what people need to understand is you have this tiny little window to talk with people, literally like 5 seconds, and you have to somehow communicate what you're about in a really succinct way, in a really fast way. And I think it feels to me like brands have to be more vertical, maybe. Is that fair?
Sure. No, sure.
Brands need to consolidate what they do. Obviously the bigger brands, but I think probably the most effective way to grow is to be more specific and be more positioned. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, I totally agree. There is one another point that having all these communication channel, which in a way they are company communication channel, but you cannot under-evaluate that today any media that in the past was a printed media, so the influence was only in the answer of who was going to buy that printed media. Today they are also on Instagram, Facebook, they have their own website, and many big online players, they are communicating your brand. So one of the difficult point is how to be able to perfectly synchronize your communication through your channels and the channels of the others, because otherwise I always say it's like the difference if I play guitar, you play piano, another one is singing, and so on, or we are all singing all together. The level of let's say the volume of what we are doing is totally different, because we are synchronized, so we are elevating the volume. The more we are singing different songs, you just create a little bit of noise in the background, but the consistency of the message through all the channels, not only in the message but also in the timing, for me is key when you want to get the right message delivered to your consumer.
So you're saying perhaps it could be translated in a new product is launched. You want to figure out, how you're going to communicate that on the website, on the PR, on the newsletter. Like all these things have to be communicated and coordinated and in such a way that it's like a band playing.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. That's interesting. I have never heard someone say it that way, but that's totally true. And what I call it is the touch points, the customer touch points.
Exactly. And I remember I learned this more than 10 years ago when I was working for Intersport in Italy and Cisalfa. And I remember the big sportswear brands, one American and one German. Okay, I don't make their name, but it's easy to understand who they are. They were spending a lot of time, a lot of money, and putting a lot of pressure for being able to have our website, the windows, the touch point at the shop, the shop attendants prepared to say always the same thing, always in the same moment, sending the newsletter and so on, all together, all at the same time. And I'm
Wow.
talking about 2009 to 2011, where Facebook was a Facebook of 15 years ago and Instagram was at the very beginning. They knew already the power of managing the touch point in that way.
Yeah, this is nothing new. This is nothing new. It's just I think it has evolved because the touch points, what we talked about before, the touch points in the digital world are constantly evolving, whether it be the website, Google, YouTube, now TikTok. I don't know if you're seeing much, but TikTok is really powerful. But I don't think people have figured out how to use it well, or they're afraid to because it's a very different channel. But let's get into, we really got into some cool topics here. But so you were at Northwave. It sounds like you did the rebrand project. You relaunched the new logo, new product categories, and then I think last summer I heard some rumblings from some people that I knew that you were going to be moving to SIDI as their CEO. Can you tell us about how that came to pass?
Well, I was not really thinking about such a move. By the way, of the things that we can say about Northwave was that the company grew by 60% between 2018 and 2022. I was not really thinking or being prepared for something like this. For sure, I was talking with the company owners of my previous company about which future could have been the possible way for Northwave. Because when you are a family-owned company, sometimes you have different ideas, perspective, and so on, compared to a situation like when you're working now for a company which is owned by an investment holding. But it doesn't change the fact that you arrive when you're growing, you arrive to a certain point where the next possible move, if you want still to grow, is I don't know, you buy a supplier, you open two more subsidiary, you buy one another brand, you buy one another category. So I mean, for sure, there are all elements which can accelerate the growth. Obviously, when you are in a big investment holding, it's just a matter of a business plan. When you are in a family business, sometimes maybe it could imply that there is a need for additional shareholders or additional investment capitals and so on. And obviously, sometimes, and this is normal and you have to accept it, some companies, some families are not open to such a move because they have their personal vision of the company. So despite the fact that I'm in a very good relationship with Mr. Piva, with the Piva family and so on. When I was contacted last year, and in the very beginning, I almost rejected. I remember the call of the Dante because I said, no, sorry, I mean, I'm okay. I'm in a company, I'm doing a good job, I'm not in a need. And he told me, listen to me, it's better that you go and you listen, and then eventually you tell me if it's a good idea or not. And so I was introduced to the team of, which is the investment holding. And after, I think, not at the first meeting, probably after a couple of meetings, they told me that they were, since a few months, approaching SIDI, and they were already in a due diligence process with the expectation to make a final deal around July and to make the closing around October. And from there, we started. We go one interview after the other till, say, Eurobike last year.
So SIDI was family owned,
Yes.
shoe company in motocross, motorcycle, and cycling.
Yes.
And the family owned the company up until last year when they sold
Yes.
100% of the company.
100% of the company. Yes.
To this investment fund holding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I'm assuming that the previous owners wanted to retire, wanted to do other things. So
well, let's say I think it's kind of a common situation, particularly in the area.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Because the territory where we are is worldwide famous for sport technical footwear development. And this is going on since the 60s, to the point that any brand that you have in mind, if is not from this area, for sure there's at least one office in this area for product development, because there is a very high level of expertise when it is about moving from a flat design to a 3D model, which is not just about a 3D model on a software, but is a physical 3D model. Most of them, they were founded by men which are still on top of these companies.
Sure.
So whether it is, again, Northwave, SIDI, but I can say Technica Group or many others, there is still the founder. And the founder, in most of the case, is 75 to 90. They have a second generation to which they never gave a real opportunity to take the control of the company. And the second generation now is around 60, 55 to 60. And there is a third generation, but which is too young because they are 25 to 30. So there are many companies, not even in technical footwear, but also in other sport product categories, where, let's say, they are more or less in the same situation, and which is affecting, obviously, the company size, is affecting the company vision for the future. There are a lot of limitations. So I think that many of these companies will be in a need of taking a decision for what they want to do for the future in the years to come.
Yeah, it happened to Colnago, Cinelli. It's to where these entrepreneurs from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, whether it's the first generation or second, yeah, they're coming up on a transition. And someone that once told me, I don't know if this is relevant to the conversation, but a friend of mine a mentor of mine who does mergers and acquisitions, he once said that it's good to you have to either be a jewel where you do one thing really well, or you have to be on a path to growth.
Sure.
You don't want to be in the middle, because it's dangerous in the middle there. Either you're very vertical in one thing, or you're growing in an important way.
Exactly.
And I think that for these,
that's the commitment that gave to us. No, meaning, okay, this is like a company which could have been kind of luxury boutique of the shoes if it was smaller, but here you are halfway between small and big. So we need to take one decision. There is obviously a lot of, because it was the first company in this area, at least, that where the founders sold 100% of the company. First of all, that they sold the company and they sold 100% of the company. So this funny story that 1 year ago nobody was even thinking about considering to sell the company. And then when talking about Dino Signori, they were thinking that it would have been the last one of the line of people selling. Unpredictably, it was the first one. And so today there are many companies which are looking for opportunities. Unfortunately, with the current scenario and market situation, is not the best moment to take such a move. They were lucky or smart enough that they did it in the right moment at the right time, but more than this, that they found the right partner, because, let's say, the good point, and also one of the points which was behind my decision, is that this company was not bought by the private equity fund. So someone which is going to invest money upfront, a defined exit strategy, which should be in 3-4 years, where they need to generate a certain return. Here is totally different, because
can you explain that? Because I wanted to understand that. Like, this is a holding company without an exit strategy defined.
Yeah. So why? Because they're coming from an industrial heritage. So they were themselves an industry. They were themselves a family. So that's why, let's say, they own and control a private equity, which is part of the Italmobiliare group, but this group is making the name is Clessidra. They are making exactly the private equity. So private equity buying companies, selling companies, that their business. With the holding, the investment holding is totally different, meaning that, let's say, Italmobiliare was, before being Italmobiliare, it was called Italcementi, founded 140 years ago, still to become one of the biggest construction group in Italy. In 1990, they started Italmobiliare. In 2015, they sold Italcementi to the largest German construction company. and invested all the money in Italmobiliare. So who is on top today of Italmobiliare is the third generation, which is Mr. Carlo Pesenti, which is a very, good man that I had the possibility to meet and to talk many times with him. He's always kidding around the fact that there is a way of saying, which is the first generation generate, the second maintain, and the third destroy. So he's the third generation, which is doing even better than probably what was the first generation. So he said, probably we're not doing that bad in the end. So, but the good point is that when they sold Italcementi to the German construction group, they kept all the governance part. That means that the headquarters in Milan, there is a number of departments, which is IT, HR, sustainability, risk management, compliance, legal affairs, and so on, which obviously serve Italmobiliare, but they support all the companies which are owned and controlled by Italmobiliare. That means that other than what we do, we have it's like to have a kind of consulting, in-house consulting company where we can, and they told us clearly, we can decide to do any project that we want to do. When we want, we can involve them, which can help to analyze, develop, create, support, helping to make progresses, making checkpoints to understand if the project is still in line with what we were in the very beginning and so on, if we want, meaning that we do not have any obligation to involve them. But if we want, we can, except for ESG, because the company was into sustainability since the year 2000. So that's the only area where there is an ESG department, very well structured. And it's the only area where we are working together with the team of Italmobiliare on creating our own ESG program.
Okay. Wow. So you've got, this is really interesting. So you've got this holding company that is providing you with support. Sounds like they're providing you with investment. So you come into this market, you come into this situation, and it sounds like you've got experience doing this, but now the market is a little bit strange.
Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe you guys are going to, what are you seeing now in the market, and what is kind of where are you at in this process of implementing these new projects? I guess how are things going?
Sure. Well, where we are, obviously, we are in the very beginning. I'm at the company since 6 months. Obviously, one of the first point was studying, understanding, analyzing, integrating with the people here. At the same time, creating a team of managers, which now are working with me in product, marketing, operation, sales, and finance. They are all on board now. The last one joined the company last Monday. They are all coming from a larger company with solid experience. It's a team of people which are all around 40. All of them are really motivated. And obviously now we are let's say in the initial stages, because there are many projects that we started meanwhile, but obviously we need to start to work with them and starting to understand what to implement, starting from where, prioritizing, and so on. So what we see on the market, I think that we see what all the others see in this moment, meaning that, let's say, bike business in a different way than moto business. Moto business almost never had big increases, but also never had big decreases. Bicycle obviously had a big bubble between, let's say, late 2020 and beginning of 2022. And obviously today there is a lot of congestions around the distribution pipeline between company distribution, retailers, and so on. The fact that we are part of such a larger group is giving us a lot of possibility to keep working on the projects that we want to work. Our our perspective, as I said, is not a short term, so they do not have to sell the company in 3 years or in 2 years, but is the long term. So let's say the team that we are working with, they give us full availability and full commitment to go on doing, structuring, developing preparing projects and so on. As in any case, as any market, as any economy, as a cycle. So it was going up, as it was going up, it is also now going down. It is going down, sooner or later it's going to be up again. So
Sure.
in the market, nobody can say something different that for the future is going to be steady or let's say growing in a certain direction. Now, more probably there is an argument about when this can happen. Everybody, they are hoping that this can happen as fast as possible, but let's say I think that everybody, we are on the same page, and the thing that, I mean, I'm talking about the industry at general level, that something will change in the middle of 2024, not before.
Sure. No, so it sounds like we're going up. We're at an hour 10 here. This has been really fun, Davide, but I know you've got other things you've got to be doing. You're running the company. So, but no, it sounds like, so you're getting the team in place, which sounds like the first part of any sort of restructuring, the people, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is exciting. I definitely, maybe we can catch up again in a year or so and see kind of how things are going. But it sounds like you're really at the beginning here.
Yeah, I would say yes. On some way, I mean, not because we are replicating what I did at Northwave, but in some way, it's reminding me the first 6 months at Northwave, when obviously there were a lot of changes, a lot of new people on board, a lot of ideas, but also a lot of energy at the same time. Because we know that we have a very good brand here, very solid company. We are controlling 100% of our production, which is also not a side issue, because 100% of SIDI products, they are made into SIDI production on facilities, which is here in Italy and in Romania. We are 100% made in Europe, which is giving us a lot of opportunity because we have a very short time to market. So we are, I can say, working hard, but identify already the direction that we want to perceive. So it would be, I mean, I'm sure more than available to get back in touch maybe in a year from now and give an update on where we are.
Yeah, no, and some of these topics we could go deep on. It sounds like marketing, touch points, all these things. So it's really amazing to get some of your time, and I'm sure people are gonna really enjoy kind of understanding your journey, because it's super interesting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Davide.
Thank you to you.
SIDI Sport, your guys' website, cidisport.com.
Yes, SIDI.com.
SIDI.com. And then people can find you if they want to link up, they can find you on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, sure. Davide Rossetti on LinkedIn or through SIDI Sport. They can easily find me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Davide. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to you. It was a pleasure to me. Thanks again. Bye. Ciao.